Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast is here, which you can get on all podcasting platforms. And on their YouTube channel, just search Inside the Birds. If you're watching on today's YouTube channel, at Mike Gill Show, hit the subscribe and like button. You can comment on the YouTube channel and on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Adam Caplan joins us now from Inside the Birds and Inside the Birds podcast on a Sports Bash Happy Hour Friday. And Adam, the Eagles rookies talking today at training camp, or I should say rookie mini camp, not training camp, obviously. So it's good to see the guys back out on the field. And we got a lot of questions. We looked at the offensive depth chart on Monday, but they drafted 6 players on defense and lost multiple players on their defense. So their defensive depth chart will definitely have some intriguing decisions when they do get to training camp.
Yeah, in fact, Mike, Jeff Mosher and I dropped the show, the one you're talking about. We call it the post-draft depth chart on defense. We did offense Monday. We did defense, I believe, yesterday morning. And now we can extrapolate a little bit. And we'll talk about the undrafted free agents next week because we've got some really good stuff on those guys. But let's stick with what we know. We're going to start on the defensive line. And it's interesting. Moro Joma's going to start next to Jalen Carter. But understanding starting means technically, Mike, who's out there for the first play on defense. Well, what it really means in football terms is this is the guy who's going to play the majority of the snaps. But does that mean for Jomo 50%, 70%, 80%? We don't know that yet. You know, that's something that they'll work through. We've talked about Ty Robinson. I heard your show earlier, Mike. Yeah, this is the guy that a lot of people around the National Football League were excited about for the draft. He's kind of a tweener. As we understand it, he's really not a great fit for a 43 front. He's a way better fit for a 34, but he's got an odd body. He's got a tweener's body, so he doesn't really fit in certain systems, and that hurt him to go in the first 3 rounds. But he's got a great first step quickness. He's very talented. His measurables are odd in that, Mike. He's 6'6", but he doesn't have long arms, and that's another thing that hurt him. But man, the guy's tape is really good. I know the Eagles are really excited to have him, and if all goes well, he'll be the main backup to Moro Jomo. Now, they'll take a look at their offseason program, see if everything looks good. If it doesn't, they can bring a veteran in the training camp. That's definitely real if they don't like what they see, but they want to see what they have first. Thomas Booker is a backup to Jordan Davis at the nose, and Jalen Carter is the 3 technique and can play anywhere you want him to play, but he's just a phenomenal football player. And now they have Byron Young, by the way, Mike. Byron Young was a former third-round pick who the Raiders, they didn't like him. They cut him after 1 season. That's not good, but the Eagles want to see him in their offseason program, get a look at him, because he's not had an offseason with them. And then Gabe Hall, who they gave a pretty big practice squad contract to, Mike, he's got incredible measurables, but there's a reason why he was not drafted. It was an effort issue with him, I'm told, and you got a really good coaching staff. Clint Hurt, one of the best D-line coaches in football. As I said when they signed him, if Clint Hurt can't reach this kid, forget about it. He'll probably never play in the NFL. And he was cut, and then no one claimed him off waivers and put on the practice squad, and now he's back, Mike. So the hope is that he can contribute. And I'm telling you, there's an opportunity here, Mike, for him. There really is. They're not super deep on the defensive line.
Well, let's take a look. You talk about that defensive line. You look at that depth chart. We know Carter, they picked up the 5th-year option on Jordan Davis. We talked a little bit more with Jeff on Wednesday about Jordan Davis and Andrew yesterday. Moro Ojomo, everybody just assumes there. You mentioned Booker, Robinson, Byron Young, and Gabe Hall, that the possibility does exist and that, they do a couple, get a veteran guy to kind of get in there. So that will be one depth chart part that we're going to look at training camp and really keep an eye on is, okay, the 4th, 5th, 6th, those guys, they might not sound like a big role, but in this defense, is a big deal.
Hey, Mike, you always, as a coaching staff, want a rotation, right? You want to have 4 or 5 guys because they run an odd man front. So their so-called outside linebackers are not linebackers; they're edge rushers. That's what Vic Fangio calls them, and that's why we're just going to separate them. So yeah, the rotation is going to be Carter, Davis, Ojomo. Well, it's really Carter, Ojomo, and Davis. Then the second unit, you're looking at Booker and Robinson, and that's So last year, Mike, the way we understood it, they had their list together of veteran defensive tackles. They made a decision which some around the league thought was a little questionable, but you got to give Howie credit. And the general manager made the right choice. They went young at D tackle. They took a small gamble, and it worked out.
Well,
so yeah, that worked for sure.
I'm very intrigued by that. We were talking about yesterday with Andrew. What's his favorite positional battle when you get to camp? We can ask you that at the end of this conversation. But
Sure.
He gave one, I gave one. Everybody seems to have a different one because there's a lot, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot, including this next one, edge rusher. They brought in, 2 free agents. They have one guy who they signed as a free agent last year who made no impact. They drafted a guy last year. This position is all over the place.
Yeah, so a favorite of our show really since they drafted. In fact, it's a pretty good story. I don't know if you know this. So with Jalix Hunt, I called Greg Cosell, who Greg works for us, as you know, as an analyst, and I said, hey, I know you're seeing 200 players, but have you seen Jalix Hunt? He goes, this is a couple weeks before the draft. He goes, what do you know on him? A, and B, do I need to see him? I'm like, you need to see him. We were told he's probably going to go to the third round. And remember, when we bring Greg in, we do primarily Eagle stuff with him, but the stuff we do before the draft is in the entire league. I said, we don't want to be shortchanged here. God forbid he goes in the third round and we don't know about him. So I saw him at the Senior Bowl. I need you to take a look at him if you can. And he goes, I'll get the tape, because he was not in the system because of the small school, but he wound up getting the tape. And he called us. He goes, I'm ready to talk about him. I'm pretty intrigued by him. And we did not know, truth be told, the Eagles would draft him, Mike. But Jalix Hunt was a surprise. Now, you should know, Mike, that he was not supposed to play last season. What do I mean by that? He was a healthy and active week 1. They had no role for him. You don't draft 5 edge rushers. You draft 4 if all 4 are healthy. And then, as you know, Bryce Huff struggled, then had the wrist surgery. He had a bad wrist, by the way, and then he had the surgery. BG was playing out of his mind, then got hurt, and Hunt had to start. Like he went from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2. I mean, he had to start, Mike. And he was so intriguing. And he's got great length. It's been a great story of development. And what we hear, he's a sponge. He wants to get better and all that. He's got a great attitude. I listened to your show earlier this week. I'm kind of with you. I think it's a little bit much to ask him to be a full-time starter, but let him earn it. He may work with the ones, but let's see what the guys who they brought in. Let's see the edge rushers that they brought in free agency, like Ojulari, who the Eagles know very well. He's had good games against the Eagles. Josh Uche is trying to revive his career. Remember, Ojulari on a 1-year deal. Uche on a 1-year deal. Huff got benched when he came back. They had no use for him. So this is actually my favorite. So then there's a guy like Antoine Powell Rowland, who is a guy that's got some upside. What I'm told on him is, Mike, I know people want to go, how the heck could a guy at 25 sacks over 2 seasons drop to the 6th?
Yeah.
One scout said to me, I thought this was hilarious. I said, could I use this? He goes, go ahead. Just don't let him know who you talk to the run. Has no interest in doing it. That'll hurt you, by the way. Not that you want to edge rusher's got to – you can't not play the run when you're out there. You can't just rush the passer. You got to make some attempt to stop the run and be an edge setter when you're asked to. He didn't really do it. It's weird. He's got good weight, but he doesn't have great measurables. He's a fascinating player, though. Very explosive. He's a guy. Look, I know you typically don't keep 6 edge rushers. Nolan Smith come back from the torn triceps, so we expect him to be limited in their offseason program if he gets on the field at all. We mentioned Bryce Huff was going to be on the team. They're not eating $17 million. O'Shawn Mathis is there, formerly the Rams, who's back for his second year, first full offseason. And KJ Henry was a draftee for the Commanders, who's highly unlikely to make the team. And Patrick Johnson's back. He only plays in specials, Mike. He's a really good special teams player. But the cool thing is, Mike, to move this along, they're going to have a competition. Hunt will be challenged in training camp. I would put my odds on him because he's got the most physical presence, but he's also very raw and young. And remember, Mike, he's not played his football career totally at edge. Remember, he was a safety to start his college career.
Yep, that one I think you said might be the one that you're most looking forward to. I think you kind of slipped that one in there too. We're talking with Adam Caplan, Football at 4 here, looking at the post-depth chart on defense, post-draft, I should say, where we've added 6 new players now to this Philadelphia depth chart. And inside linebacker has two additions to the depth chart. You've got Bond, you've got Dean, who's coming back from an injury here. You got Campbell. Trotter was drafted last year. Smile Monday was also drafted here. So how's this depth chart going to play out?
And, Mike, they're really light there. Now,
they were light there last year.
I know, and they got away with it, man. Boy, did they get it.
How many conversations, Adam, did we have where we're saying this is the worst linebacking core in the league?
Well, hang on. So here's the deal with Zach Bond. Howie Roseman didn't know. Even though Vic Fangio made the call to move him to inside backer, he didn't know he'd be a superstar.
Oh, I know.
I listen. By the way, really good baseball talk was with Bob Wankel. You and him the last hour.
Yep. Thanks.
There's things that happen that you can't explain. Like Jeff and I have done the show for 8 years. I would say, other than Mailata coming, obviously he was a rugby player, never played football in his life. I'd probably say Bond's the biggest surprise of many with the Eagles over the years. So we know Bond's going to be a starter. That's not in question. Now, by the way, we should mention this because your listeners will love this interview. We just dropped it, I believe. We did a great interview with Aaron Borgman, who was a assistant athletic trainer for the Eagles for a number of years, and Andy Reid and Rick Burkholder, the former Eagles head athletic trainer, brought him to Kansas City. And Aaron broke down what it's like and how you come back from shoulder labrum surgery. But we also talked about which is the Jihad Campbell injury, Mike, which he's coming back from, and the timeline and what happens with that. And we talked about other players coming back from injuries, just what develops there. So we encourage people to listen to that. And then Jeff did this great interview. We're going to give, for our Patreon members, got the full interview. We give a sample of it, which is on. We just put it on YouTube on Pod with Jeff Nixon, the offensive coordinator from Syracuse, who, by the way, worked under Chip Kelly as an assistant. He's been a longtime running backs coach in the league, Coach Christian McCaffrey, and Saquon Barkley with the Giants. And Nixon does a great job of explaining Kyle McCord. It is a really interesting interview, really. And Greg Cosell, by the way, also broke him down for us. So check those out on our platforms. But getting back to inside backer, Mike, the only question for Campbell, who they're going to start him off when he's allowed to practice at inside backer. Then he'll do edge. Both will happen, Mike. And I think over time you have to be patient. What Greg Cosell taught us is what a scout who Jeff and I know really well said, because he had what's called an over the top grade. He was a cross checker. He said Campbell, as explosive as he can be as an edge rusher, is not as instinctive. It's all tape based. This is not an opinion. It's what the tape tells you. He said he's not always sure. He's a little bit hesitant sometimes, but when he sees it correctly, that's when he looks explosive. So that's why there's an inconsistency. He's new to inside backer, Mike. When he plays inside backer for the Eagles, people have to be patient. So I like what Mike Mayock said. I heard the clip that you had. I agree with Mike here. Vic Fangio could do wonders with this guy because he's so explosive as a pass rusher and he's got great energy. Then you got Trot Jr., who I know behind the scenes, we reported this last year, was doing really well. Mondon, and then Dallas Gant. So they're a little bit light. They could use another one. That's one where it wouldn't surprise us at all if they sign a veteran by their veteran camp in June or sign one by training camp, just to have a veteran minimum guy, just to have depth. But look, they're going to continue to look at Trotter, Mondon, and that's that. And Dean's not going to be ready for week one because that's a major injury. And Aaron Borgman did tell us that it's a longer rehab than ACL. But the Eagles expect him to play, by midseason, but you can't expect him to be what he was before the injury.
All right, we're talking with Adam Caplan, looking at the Eagles depth chart. As you know, I mean, we did offense on Tuesday's appearance,
Yep.
And that one's pretty settled, other than maybe right guard and what happens at tight end and that third receiver. But defense, every position, we got questions. I mean,
Yep.
You look at corner in that room. Andrew said this competition is his favorite. Quinyon Mitchell, Adoree Jackson. Well, Mitchell, we know. Adoree Jackson, Kaylee Ringo, Mac McWilliams. What do they do with him? Eli Ricks, because today McWilliams said they played him on the outside at rookie camp. Now, that obviously could change. But This room here, a couple years ago, there was like 9 names in this cornerback field. It's pared down a bit.
Yeah, and the other Mac, they used to have Mac McCain, didn't work out very well at corner. So, but this one they have higher expectations for. So
Mac McCain was part of when Howie was making trades, and every trade he got back some corner.
Yeah, it didn't work. But this one, what we were told is the Eagles are going to look at him as an inside and outside corner. Now, the reason why a lot of teams told us they see him more as a nickel defender than cornerback, because his arm length is really short, Mike. Think about if you had him playing on the outside, if he plays against Mike Evans. Mike Evans' wingspan is probably a half a foot, if not longer, than Mac McWilliams. That's a problem. Right now, Mike, outside corner, Quinyon Mitchell starts, obviously. Opposite him is either Dory Jackson or Keely Ringo. That's a battle in training camp. Eli Ricks, who the staff's not real big on, and Tyree Castro Fields, another former 49ers draft pick. Now, could they bring in another veteran? Sure. A veteran minimum guy? Sure. This is another one. Let's see what Mac McWilliams does in their off-season program. And let's see when Dory Jackson starts practicing later this month. Let's see what he looks like. So, yeah, they're probably a guy short. But, again, the season doesn't start till September. We try to warn people that. Now, at nickel, it's DeJean, McWilliams probably, and then Parry Nickerson, who's played nickel for most of his career. Vic knows him from Miami. He was with them last season. Then finally, Mike, at safety, Blankenship, and then the other stories, who's going to start opposite Blankenship? I put heavy money on Makuba, but Sidney Brown's more of a box player. Makuba's a post safety. That means a free safety. And then Tristan McCollum, Lewis Seen is more of a box safety. And then Andre Sam, who was with them last year, he'll struggle to make the football team. He didn't make it last year. He was on the practice squad. So they're okay there. They don't really need anybody. Is Makuba, is he going to be ready to go? I would expect him to win that, but they got to have the battle first.
You think they bring in a veteran player at safety just to add someone to kind of add competition to that group? There's not a lot of experience in that room.
But, Mike, two things. They've shown the willingness. They did it at D-tackle last year, which was a minor surprise. And at safety, Mike, they have Blankenship starts. It's not a battle. But they want to take – this is a big year for Sidney Brown. He's healthy. Makuba is a second-round pick. By the way, Mike, just so folks know, second-round picks do not sit unless they're not ready. We told people this with Quinyon Mitchell this time last year when people were all worried about him starting with the third team. We told him it's nonsense. Don't pay attention to it. If he's ready, he'll start. Makuba will start if he's ready as long as he looks right. You don't draft second-rounders. That is a starter round, Mike.
Yeah. The
first three rounds are starter rounds. Now, Sidney Brown, what happened there? A, the ACL injury. B, Mike, let's call it like it is. He's more of a box safety. He doesn't have the great coverage skills that you need. So, now Lewis Seen is intriguing. He's healthy. There's nothing wrong with him. I was told by a source close to the situation that Minnesota, as we actually reported this at the time, Brian Flores, a defensive coordinator, didn't really like him as a player. He just didn't see a fit. Now, the guy was a first-round pick. You could basically say, should he have been? I don't know, but he suffered a compound fracture. He's fine. Let's see what he does. Now, do they need another safety? Not really, Mike. What's the point? Now, if Brown doesn't look right, if he doesn't perform in the offseason program, if Makuba's not ready, different story. But I don't see the Eagles thinking, oh boy, geez, we don't expect Brown to perform. We don't think Makuba will be ready. It's not the way teams look at it.
All right, Adam, that's going to be fun. The defensive battles at training camp, they are legitimate. I mean, there are a lot. There's 4 starters, but you got to throw Warren Burks in there too as another guy. I mean, he started in the Super Bowl. He was a very important player. They got to replace not only Dean, but the guy who replaced Dean in the Super Bowl, Burks. So you really need 2 guys possibly for the at least first couple of weeks there. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. Eagles rookies are in Philly this weekend. And, of course, we'll have more on Football at 4. And check out the Inside the Birds podcast for more post-draft coverage and all the Eagles off-season workouts right here on Football at 4. All right, Adam. Appreciate you, pal.
Thank you.